The role of psychotropic plants, psychoactive substances, and entheogens in the development and evolution of mankind cannot be underestimated. Most people nowadays have a tainted view of psychoactives, grouping them in with hard addictive drugs and associating anyone who would use them with junkies, criminals, and undesirables. But these thoughts are not based on truth, but on government propaganda implanted in the brain through politics, media, and the education system. They employ this propaganda not so much because they don't want people to think for themselves. They don't want that either, but because they don't want people to unplug from the machine. The usage of psychoactive substances is definitely known to foster nonconformity and free thought. But more importantly, it is also known to enable awareness without thought, the capacity to plainly see what is really there in the absence of thinking, belief systems, and internal narrative. The clarity of seeing things as they are is dangerous to the system. They would much rather you be constantly thinking, for this is what puts one once removed from clear seeing. Ideally, they want you lost in a maze with implanted thoughts. If not, then they will settle for you to be lost in a maze with free thoughts. What they don't want is for one to have a bird's eye view of the maze. For with this, the way out of the maze can be clearly seen, which is a far greater threat. Free thinkers are a nuisance, but a gentle one, and one that can be dealt with. Free thinkers work from the same agreed-upon foundation. They may seek to tweak the system, but they still validate and accept the system. People that have transcended thinking are ones that have no problem completely changing the system or overthrowing it. They have absolutely no problem with starting over from scratch. Most people want to avoid these types of people cropping up, because although the system is dysfunctional, a lot of people are benefiting from this dysfunction. In fact, the system was never designed to be completely functional for all. Only by its dysfunction does it enable the class-based divisions of the haves and the have-nots. For so long as they can keep people forever lost in debates and arguments, mired in red tape to achieve slight changes to the pre-existing order, and scratching and clawing in desperation just to meet their basic needs, all is well. All these affairs are still system-dependent, and therefore all good. Not to say that dissidence is not annoying to the system. It is, but it's no real threat. They can always buy you off with table scraps, give you a little fame, or, if worse comes to worse, have you assassinated. This is all but sport to them. You are never really a threat because deep down you suffer from the same greed as they do. You may be unhappy with the system, but you still support the system, and this is what they count on. When you boil it down, they don't want you engaging in anything that will prevent you from being a slave. A dysfunctional or non-productive slave is not a problem, because they are still a slave. They have found ways to profit from this non-productive dysfunction and have built industries around it. The functional and productive slaves are fine when they are working, but annoying when they start clamoring and demanding rights, benefits, and wages. They need only find a way to quell or appease these slaves. It is the slaves that seek freedom that are a thorn in their side. These slaves only want freedom, freedom that is inherent and not afforded to you by war, laws, constitutions, and rights. They have no way to profit from these slaves other than trying to maneuver them into prison. These slaves can't be bought off, quelled, or appeased because they do not seek rights, benefits, and wages, and make no demands other than the demand to be free. So this is why psychoactive substances are outlawed. What's really being outlawed is clear seeing and the knowledge gained through empirical experience. The true freedom that is not entangled in conformity and restricting thought patterns. Government, business, and religion desperately want to steer you away from this. What good are you to them if you do not believe what you are told to believe? Or worse yet, if you have no beliefs, then you are no longer a good sheep, no longer a good slave, no longer a good consumer or worker. You are no longer a viable lemming. The usage of psychoactives has been going on for thousands of years, so who do they think they are kidding? The ban's purpose is transparent, especially since they cannot find any legitimate reason to justify it. Bottom line, they don't want you to have access to anything that would free your mind. And this is one of the main things that psychoactives facilitate. They don't want people seeking true freedom, but rather needy and dependent on fake freedom. The kind of freedom that is established and then enforced with weapons. And what this all translates into is stagnation of progress for the sake of greed and immediate satisfaction. For mankind owes the bulk of his development to the use of psychotropic plants and funguses. Minimizing their role, demonizing them, and outlawing them is like banishing a trustworthy best friend just so you can take control of his material holdings. Many of you may scoff at the notion of psychoactives being instrumental to mankind's progression, so let's delve into it. Now, I would not discount the role extraterrestrials played in mankind's advances, but would argue that an extraterrestrial's presence would not be sufficient catalyst alone to spark mankind's evolution of consciousness from instinct to self-awareness. When a creature is operating on instinct, it has inherent limitations that will not be breached by external environmental factors. Take the most advanced primate on the planet today and expose it to our greatest technologies and special effects, and see whether or not these items play any role in shifting its consciousness away from instinct. Not even long-term intimate interactions between humans and the advanced primate, which is equatable to the early primitive man in an extraterrestrial scenario, would do anything to propel the jump from instinct. Only things that tweak the brain itself, that have a profound impact on mind, perception, consciousness, and awareness, would be a plausible explanation as to how man's consciousness evolved. And the only thing that we know that can do this for sure is psychoactive substances. And it's not like there was ever a chance that mankind wouldn't ingest a psychoactive. In a world filled with creatures seeking food, at one time or another, mankind has tried eating anything he could get his hands on. So it was never a matter of if, but only when. When mankind began to develop self-awareness and intelligence, only then could extraterrestrials begin to have a useful interaction. But the role of psychoactives didn't stop there. Not only did psychoactives propel man from instinct to self-awareness, continuing to have an influence with deeper insights, innovations, discoveries, and utilizations of the material world, but it also served as the foundation of all spirituality and philosophy. This is why a lot of the attitudes towards psychoactives by a wide variety of different spiritualists over the years has been disrespectful and dismissive. They would have you believe that psychoactives are unnecessary, inconsequential, and even detrimental, but it couldn't be further from the truth. They owe all their modern wisdom, knowledge, and introspective insight to someone's use of a psychoactive substance long ago. How do you think it all got started? Certainly not through intelligence, which is essentially a tool of navigation and scheming of the material spectrum. In a brutal world of survival of the fittest and natural selection, spirituality and philosophy really have no place, and certainly wouldn't have emerged out of nowhere all by itself without some influential catalyst to stimulate it. If not for psychoactives, there would be nothing to compel us to question the surface appearances, nor to seek to probe beyond the surface appearance. A well-known spiritualist once dismissively referred to a psychoactive experience as, quote, plastic fruit. Yet this is the whole point. If mankind never became aware of the superficial plastic fruit quality of reality, then there would be no meditation, no introspective exploration, no transcendence, no enlightenment, no spirituality, period. Psychoactives opened the door to all these things. And this is why psychoactives still play a role for mankind to this day. I don't know whether you have noticed or not, but a majority of people in the world right now are spiritually ill. They suffer from what could be referred to as surface sickness, what could be further classified as naive realism, a materialistic devotion to the surface facades of appearances taken at face value. And spirituality hasn't done anything to help this, by and large. Especially since spirituality has become swamped, diluted, and deluged by a multitude of false teachers, false teachings, and a false perverted association to religion and dogma. A lot of these spiritually sick people never even have an opportunity to find a spiritual path because they are stuck on the surface, and they usually remain there. Or, unfortunately, if they do have an inkling of spirituality, they become ensnared and entangled in religion. Psychoactive substances are the medicine that can serve to heal these sicknesses and act as a stepping stone to true spirituality. It can serve as such, not to say that it always will. Psychoactives deal in deepened experiences and awareness, the core of spirituality, that from where all wisdom is obtained. But it's important to note that one should not expect to take a psychoactive substance and become enlightened. I wouldn't be as bold as to say that it's impossible, but I would say that it's very uncommon or rare. A lot of the experiences on psychoactives are quickly forgotten, embedded deep in the subconscious upon returning to ordinary awareness. A lot more than people realize, and they don't realize it because they can't remember it or access it with their conscious minds. So most of the experiences are unlimited and usually related to some kind of context and content. Only very seldomly do they lead one back to source. But these experiences do serve to soften the hard glue of a mind conditioned to the programming of a surface description of reality and the stubborn insistence that it's, quote, real. Many people are cemented in righteous beliefs, and they need something to shake up their worlds. Psychoactives have been, and always will be, the perfect medicine.